Tomorrow marks President Trump's 100th day in office. This is going to be a big deal. But why? Why do people even care? Well, marking the first 100 days is a significant tradition, which I'm going to talk more about in a second. But the fact is, there is no constitutional significance to a president's first 100 days in office. There's no law that says X, Y, and Z has to happen in the first 100 days. And the first 100 days don't necessarily indicate the success or failure of a president's term. In fact, one former presidential advisor has said the idea of marking the first 100 days is more like a Hallmark holiday. But that doesn't mean the first 100 days aren't important. Most political watchers will tell you the first 100 days is when a new president is at the height of his power. For almost 100 years, the 100-day mark has been a measuring stick and a gauge to see how successful that president is with all that power of the office behind him to deliver on the promises he made to the American people on the campaign trail. So let me tell you a little story about how it all began. Welcome back to 1932. Imagine the United States was in the middle of a crippling depression. 1 in 4 workers were unemployed. 1 in 5 Americans were barely surviving. The stock market was down 75% over just 3 years. The banking industry was on the verge of full collapse. It was bad. People were freaked out. But then, in 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, a Democrat, was elected to be the 32nd president of the United States. See, FDR believed in big government. He thought the government wasn't doing enough to prop up the American economy and the American people. And in 1933, when he took the oath of office, he gave an inaugural address. And in that speech, he reassured the American people in one famous line.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
His speech continued, and he said he was going to move at unprecedented speed to pull the United States out of that depression. And he did. He wanted Americans back to work. He wanted industry back up and running, and he wanted to create prosperity. And he wasn't afraid to use the tremendous power of the federal government and the tremendous power of his office to make it happen. He left that stage on Inauguration Day and immediately called Congress back into an emergency special session that lasted almost 3 months. And through that session, at the direction of FDR, Congress passed 15 landmark pieces of legislation that mostly hold up to this day. They tackled everything, all of the things that Roosevelt had promised, starting with the banks. In his first week in office, he got the banks back up and running. Then he focused on relief for the unemployed and the poor. Then he got the rest of the economy back up to normal levels. He focused on agriculture, and then he enacted banking reforms to prevent another depression. He issued proclamations and 99 executive orders that fundamentally changed the role of the federal government and the lives of the American people. This was the beginning of what we now call the New Deal. He and Congress were obviously busy. There were clearly no TVs or social media back then, but there were newspapers and, of course, radios. And FDR used that radio technology to communicate directly and constantly with the American people about everything he was doing in a series he called Fireside Chats. And about 30 days after his first 100 days in office, FDR had a fireside chat to talk all about all the things he had accomplished. And in that speech, that's when he coined the term the first 100 days. So you could say FDR knocked those first 100 days out of the park. Okay, fast forward to today, and all modern presidents have somehow recognized the first 100 days in office as a milestone. Some try to downplay it, and others celebrate it. When it comes to President Trump, there is no denying that he has used his first 100 days of this second term to aggressively follow through on his campaign promises to reshape the federal government and the country as a whole, as much as he can. He has signed a record number of executive orders, far more than any other president at this 100-day mark. But the downside to that is a lot of those actions have been stopped by the federal courts for overstepping the authority of his office. Some courts have blatantly called what Trump is doing unconstitutional. On the flip side, Trump has signed a record low number of bills into law during his first 100 days.